We are not called into the Christendom to strive against sins, but we are called to strive in attaining perfection by laying aside every weight and sins which does so easily beset us, in order to run the race that is set before us in patience. Hebrews chapter 12 verse 1 to 4. Hebrews chapter 12 verse 1 to 4 says, "Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of throne of God. For consider him that endures contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be weary and faint in your mind. Ye have not yet resisted unto blood, striving against sin." Here Apostle Paul says to the Hebrew, you people are still striving against sins, while other men in the kingdom has left that stages. Other men in the kingdom has grown beyond that. He says, mature men that are in the kingdom have stopped that nonsense. They are even ready to resist unto blood. That is, they are ready to die for the sake of protecting the interest of the gospel. While you Hebrews are here striving against one sin or the other. Beloved, this is applicable to many of us who are still struggling with one sin or the other. While other men that you started the race together, and those who started after you has grown beyond striving against one sin or the other. Beloved, the message of today is what I titled, Why Striving Against Sin. Why striving against sin? Under the topic, we have about 6 points to be considered. Point number one, hard to say goodbye. Hard to say goodbye. One of the reasons why many people are still striving against one sin or the other in the kingdom, it is when it is hard them to say goodbye. Hard them to say goodbye. You are once a single lady, and now that you are married, you should be able to say goodbye to your former boyfriends. You have to delete his telephone numbers. Don't even imagine that he or she will be of help to you tomorrow. Your help will come from other people. Flee from temptation. You are once a fornicator, and now that you determine to stop, you should be able to say goodbye to your co-partners in that ministry. You are once known to be a gossiper, and now that you determine to stop that nonsense, you should be able to say goodbye to your colleagues in that faculty. You are once a complainer. You complain to God at home. You complain in your office. You complain in school. You complain. Marketplace. You complain. Even in the church, you are still complaining. And now that you are charged to stand to thank God, now that you are charged to thank God in all circumstances, to show gratitude to Him, you need to say goodbye to those school of thought that says authority must be questioned. You are once a member of armed robbers, and now that you have seen the light, that you are liable to die at any time you are caught, you ought to say goodbye to your colleague in that ministry. You are once an alert, and now that you stop that business venture, you should be able to say goodbye to your business associates. You are once worldly men and women, and now that you are heavenly, you should be able to say goodbye to worldly activities. You are once a sinner, lying, stealing, proud, hatred, violence. Now that you are saved, you should be able to say goodbye to those sinful lifestyles. You are once maltreated and cheated, and that led to your bitterness of heart. And of course, now that you know that it is a sin, you should be able to say goodbye to the past experience and face the future. You are once masturbating, and now that you determine to stop that nonsense, you should be able to say goodbye to the school of lust. Failure to say goodbye will lead to striving. You will keep on repeating the same sin often and often. Brethren, you should be able to say goodbye to yesterday for the sake of today. You need to forget the past for the sake of what future has to offer. Philippians chapter 3, verse 13 to 14. Philippians chapter 3, verse 13 to 14 says, Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind, and reaching forth unto those things which are before. I press toward the mark for the prize of our calling of God in Christ Jesus. Here, Apostle Paul says, goodbye to the past in order to press towards reaching what future have to offer him. He refused to be weighed down with sins and mistakes of the past. All his past experience as anti-gospel of Christ and killing of preacher of gospel like Stephen. He gave his consent to his death. Now, that is no more a sinner, he left the past go. He never get weighed down by the past for the sake of the future. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 says, "Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us." Here, Apostle Paul says, we all need to lay aside and say goodbye to all the activities that is capable to weigh us down, and those things who are so easily beset us, in order to run the race that is set before us. Beloved, let us say goodbye to the past and face the future. Beloved, let bygone be bygone. Let us start over again. Why not say goodbye to bitterness of heart? Why not say goodbye to unforgiveness? Why not say goodbye to hatred? Why not say goodbye to fornication? Why not say goodbye to adultery? Why not say goodbye to lust? Why not say goodbye to lying? Why not say goodbye to violence? Why not say goodbye to fear and timidity? Why not say goodbye to unrighteousness and goodbye to malice? Why not say goodbye to all of uncleanness? Point number 2. Unconquered enemies called lust. Unconquered enemy called flesh. Unconquered enemy called flesh. Another one of the reasons why several people are striving against one sin or the other is unconquered enemy called flesh. An enemy you fail to put to silence will always rise up against you at any time. He will always want to contend with you. Romans chapter 7, verse 14 to 24. Romans chapter 7, verse 14 to 24 says, "For we know that the Lord is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. For that which I do, I allow not. For what I would, that do I not. But what I hate, that do I. If then I do that which I will not, I consent unto the law that it is good. Now then, it is no more I that dwell, is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. For I know that in me, that is, in my flesh, dwelleth no good things. For to will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good I find not. For the good that I would, I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. Now if I do that I will not, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. I found then a law, that which I would do good, evil is present with me. For I delight in the law of God after the inward man. But I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? Beloved, when you have a similar case like that of Apostle Paul, you need to conquer Mr. Flesh. Failure to do that, you will be rising and falling at any time. The fact that you are carnal make it easy for Mr. Flesh to defeat you. The law is spiritual, and you ought to be spiritual for you to defeat Mr. Flesh. You need to be spiritual for you to defeat flesh and keep to the law. You can't defeat sin being a carnal man. That is why God called us to be spiritual, because He Himself is spiritual. John chapter 4, verse 24. John chapter 4, verse 24 says, God is a spirit, and they that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. Of course, no carnal man can meet up to God's expectation. Flesh has no good things to offer anyone. It is the inner man that doeth good. It is the inner man that does good. Until your inner man conquered flesh, you will always striving against sins at any time. John chapter 6, verse 63. John chapter 6, verse 63 says, it is the spirit that quickeneth the flesh, profiteth nothing. The word that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life. Here Jesus Christ consents to it that flesh has no profit to offer anyone. Apostle Paul also says the same thing in Romans chapter 7, verse 8, that flesh has no good offer. Inward man, that is spirit man and the flesh. Inward man and the spirit man. Inward man, that is the spirit man and flesh. Your inward man should be able to overcome flesh before you could ever stop striving against sin. As long as your flesh prevails and defeats your inner man, you are bound to be rising today and falling tomorrow. Your inward man is always, inward man is always willing to do good, keeping to God's instruction, while flesh always wants to do the opposite. Now, victory of any one of the two, that is your spirit man and your flesh, will determine by your devotions. If you are the type that devoted your time and strength for the things of the spirit higher than that of the flesh, higher than that of the things of the flesh, the inward man, that is the spirit man, will conquer. And if otherwise, the flesh will do. For instance, we have 24 hours in a day, and you spend only 11 hours on spiritual things and 13 hours on fleshly things. I assure you that you will always striving against one sin or the other. Once the temptation to sin comes your way, easily you will be defeated, since you never devote much time for spiritual activities. Beloved, for you to defeat Mr. Flesh, you must always walk in the Spirit. You must always walk in the Spirit to defeat flesh. Galatians chapter 5, verse 16. Galatians chapter 5, verse 16 says, "This I say, then walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. Walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh." Beloved, ensure that you walk at all times in the Spirit. By doing this, you will be able to put flesh under subjection. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11 says, "Dearly beloved, I beseech you, as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lust, which war against the soul." Here, Apostle Peter charges us to detach ourselves from fleshly lust, that is, all the ambition of the flesh. He charges us to detach ourselves from fleshly lust, desires, ambitions that are not spiritual, who is always at war against the inward man. And by so doing, he shall be able to conquer Mr. Flesh. By so doing, we shall stop striving against one sin or the other. Point number 3. Point number 3. Spiritual immaturity. Spiritual immaturity. One among several reasons why many people are striving against one sin or the other is spiritual immaturity. Just like a year-old baby we strive with strong men, so likewise the spiritual immature men and women are always found themselves striving with one sin or the others. Hebrews chapter 5, verse 11 to 14. Hebrews chapter 5, verse 11 to 14 says, of whom we have many things to say, and hard to be uttered, seeing ye are dull of hearing. For the time ye ought to be teachers, ye have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of God, and are become sure as have need of meat, and not of strong meat. For everyone that useth meat is unskillful in the words of righteousness. For he is a baby, but strong meat belong to them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. Here, Apostle Paul is saying that he has many things to say, but the set of Hebrews that was with him were not matured. They were baby Christians who are still struggling with one sin or the others, who are still striving with one sin or the other. He has many words to dish out, but the people were not mature enough to take them, because they were still struggling with basic principles in the kingdom. Just like many of us are still struggling to pay tithe and offering, which are basic principles in kingdom's prosperity. Now, if you can't give what you have, how will you give yourself to God as an instrument of righteousness? Some baby Christians are still struggling with love. They hate their neighbors and fight with nearly everybody. Now, if you can't love a man and woman, you see, how would you love God that you can't see? These are basic principles. These are basic kingdom principles for living. We have some immature Christians who profess to love their brethren and hate their enemies, when Jesus Christ has charges every mature Christian in the kingdom to love both their enemies and their friends, to love both their brethren and their enemies. Matthew chapter 5, verse 43 to 48. Matthew chapter 5, verse 43 to 48 says, ye have heard that it has been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thy enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemy, bless them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and setteth rain on the just and on the unjust. For if ye love them which loved you, what your reward have ye? Do not even the publicans the same? And if you salute your brethren only, what do ye more than others? Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Here you are perfect in love. Once you love both your brethren and your friend. It is only the mature Christian that can take this hard or strong meal. Some baby Christians are still struggling with sexual immaturity. They are still struggling with sexual immoralities, fornication, adultery. Meanwhile, the mature Christian has stopped that nonsense. They have grown to the extent that they don't want to look at a woman twice to avoid lust. Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 to 28. Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 to 28 says, Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you, that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her has committed adultery with her already in his heart. Now, if you are the type that is struggling against sexual immorality, you need to stop that nonsense. Zip up your trouser and skirt now. Beloved, heaven is made for the mature Christian. You need to grow to maturity now. Point number 4. Ignorance. Another reason why many people are striving against one sin or the other is ignorance. In Christendom, ignorance is forbidden. It is not welcome at all. It has never been the support of God. From the book of Genesis to the last chapter in the book of Revelation, God hates ignorance with perfect hatred. God hates ignorance. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 13 to 15. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 13 to 15 says, Therefore my people are gone into captivity because they have no knowledge, and their noble men are famished, and their multitude dry up with thirst. Therefore, hell has enlarged herself and opened her mouth without measure, and their glory and their multitude and their poor, and he that rejoiceth shall descend into it. And The mean man shall be brought down, the mighty shall be humble, and the eyes of the lofty shall be humble. Here, God says Christians are gone into captivities because they lack knowledge. Since they strive with one sin or the other due to their lack of knowledge, and that resulted to their captivities. We have only two types of captivity: lawful captivities and unlawful captivities. Lawful captivity, this means when a person is bound by law, that is, the bondage is allowed by law. The captivities is justification by law. Unlawful captivities, this means when a bondage is not supported by law, no legal stand to back up the captivity. Now, God is saying that His own people, that is Christian, are into both lawful and unlawful captivities because of lack of knowledge. And we all know that sins always resorted to bondage. Sins always resorted to bondage. Meanwhile, ignorance is not an escape truth to justify a sin. Ignorance is not an escape route to justify a sinner. You can't be caught in sin and be set free just because you say you lack knowledge. You will still face the rod of the law. The people of God are struggling with one sin or the other because they lack knowledge of the consequence of their actions. Their noble men and women are silenced in the grave because they strive against one sin or the other due to their lack of knowledge. Their mighty men were brought down because of struggling against sins. Brethren, you need to kick against ignorance if you desire to stop some of those sins that you are still struggling against. You need to kick against ignorance in order for you to stop striving against one sin or the other. For instance, if you are the type that is striving against lust of the flesh, like masturbation, fornication, if you know ahead that watching a lot on TV, on any social media will resort to that, you may probably not be a victim. Now, your ignorance never escape you from being a victim. Beloved, failure to know what you ought to know resorted to your striving against one sin or the other. failure to know what you ought to know brought about struggling with one sins or the other. Point number 5, separation. Point number 5, separation. One of the reasons why several people in the whole world are striving against one sins or the other is also their failure to live a separated life. Of course, temptation is everywhere, but only those who could live a separated life in times of the following: marriage alliance, worldly pleasure, business alliance, worldly companion, will not fall victim, will not be striving against one sins or the other. Leviticus chapter 20 verse 23 to 24. Leviticus chapter 20 verse 23 to 24 says, "And ye shall not walk in the manner of the nation which I cast out before you. For they committed all these things, and therefore I abhorred them. But I have said unto you, ye shall inherit their land, and I will give it unto you to possess it, a land that floweth with milk and honey. I am the Lord your God, which have separated you from other people." Here, God knows that you are bound to strive against one sins or the other. That was why He charged you to live a separated life. Beloved, sins is communicable disease. It can move from one person to another. So to avoid it, you must stay away from sinners. Live a separated life. You must live a separated life by number 1, marriage alliance. When you marry a sinner, you are equally a sinner. No matter how spiritual you may be, once you marry a carnal man, you are automatically a carnal man. When you marry a carnal woman, you are automatically a carnal man. Beloved, you are bound to keep on struggling against one sins or the other. Once you marry someone who hates what you believe, you need a special grace to do away with sins if you marry unbeliever. Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 1 to 4. Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 1 to 4 says, "When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and has cast out many nations before thee, the Hittite, the Gerasite, and Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Perizzite, and the Ephitite, and the Jebusite, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. When the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor shew mercy unto them. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. for they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you, and destroy you thee suddenly. Here, God says, marry those who share not the same belief with you will cause you to be striving against one sins or the other. You will go astray, and this will result to sudden destruction. Beloved, don't say you will comfort him or her after marriage. The power of conversion is not under you. The power of conversion is not under your control. God still have the sole custodians of that. God, the sole conversion of mankind, say don't marry people that hate your faith in him. Brethren, marrying unbeliever is an act of disobedience to God's commandment that says thou shouldn't. Another way to live a separated life in order to stop struggling with one sin or the other is to worldly pleasure. Worldly pleasure. 1 John chapter 2 verse 15 to 17. 1 John chapter 2 verse 15 to 17 says, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the Lord thereof. But he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. Here you are giving a commandment not to love the world and everything that are inside it. And he said further that if you love the world, you are automatically hate God. The love of God is not in you. Beloved, when you love the world and whatever that are inside it, you will always striving against lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Brethren, since we always hold you captive as long as you love the worldly pleasure, Moses would have died striving against one sin or the other, if not that he flew for his dear life and cleave to God. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 24 to 26. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 24 to 26 says, by faith Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. Here Moses chose to identify with God He refused to be named with Pharaoh's daughters. He refused to be named with the sinner and choosing to suffer affliction with the people of God. He cast aside all the worldly pleasure in the land of Egypt and cleaved to God's people. Beloved, if Moses has not done what he did, he will always striving against one sin or the other. Another way through which you can separate yourself and stop striving against one sin or the other is business alliance. Business alliance. When you are in partnership business with people that hate what you believe, with absolute hatred, you end up striving against sins. You will be lured to do against your faith. Genesis chapter 26. Genesis chapter 26 verse 12 to 16. Genesis chapter 26 verse 12 to 16 says, Then Isaac sowed in that land and received in the same year 100-fold. And the Lord blessed him, and the man waxed great and went forward and grew until he became very great. For he had possession of flocks and possession of herds and great store of servants. And the Philistine envied him for all the well which his father's servant had digged in the day of Abraham, his father. The Philistine had stopped them and fed them with earth. And Abimelech said unto Isaac, Go from us, for thou art much mightier than we. Here, Abimelech asked Isaac to separate from them, since he liked to do business in their land. He was asked to separate from them. Beloved, Isaac need to leave their land, otherwise one day fight may occur between him and the Philistine. When he departed to the village of Gerar, there he also encountered the strife. Genesis chapter 26 verse 17 to 21. His helmet are striving against helmet of Gerar. Brethren, to avoid striving against sins and sinner, we must stay away from venturing into the same business together with them. No partnership business with the sinner. Another way through which you could separate yourself in order to avoid striving against one sin or the other is through worldly companion. Beloved, you can't make a sinner your best friend and be free from sin. It is practically impossible. Psalm 1 verse 1 to 3. Psalm 1 verse 1 to 3 says, Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the comfort, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law does he meditate day and night. When you make sinners your companion, you will walk like an ant. You will walk like elephant and eat like ant. When you make sinners your companion, you will walk and live by their counsel, and you can't stay from striving against one sin or the other. Beloved, Daniel makes Ananias, Mishael, and Azariah his companion because he never want to be striving against one sin or the other in the land of Babylon. Brethren, you will be doing yourself injustice having a sinner as your companion. In the whole world, if you can't find a righteous man or woman, stay alone. It is better you be a friend to yourself than to be a friend to people that hate what you believe. Point number 6. Incomplete obedience. Incomplete obedience. Another one of the reasons why many people are striving against one sins or the other is incomplete obedience. Isaiah chapter 30 verse 1. Isaiah chapter 30 verse 1 says, "Woe to the rebellious children, say the Lord, that take counsel but not of me, and that cover with a covering but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin." Here God declares woe to those who are not walking according to the counsel of his word. He does that because they are bound to be striving against one sin or the other. Beloved, you are more likely to add sin to sin when your obedience to God is uncompleted. You will just be striving against one sin or the other, since you are not perfect in obedience to him. Now, when you're obedient to God is uncompleted, more temptation to sin will always come your way. You will fall into many sinful acts, most especially lying. Nearly everyone couldn't obey God strictly because of their incomplete obedience. Nearly everyone couldn't obey God strictly. I always look for one thing or the other to cover up, and in the process covering one sin and get multiple sins. Once you cover one sin, you will get multiple sins. Adam and Eve in Genesis chapter 2 verse 15 to 17. Genesis chapter 2 verse 15 to 17. God gave an express commandment to Adam, and the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. Here Adam was giving clear instruction on what to do and not to do. Of course, he and his wife even kept to the God's commandment until one day they couldn't complete because Satan came to deceive Eve. And Eve lured her husband Adam to sin of disobedience. They both fell into the trap of the serpent. They ate the forbidden fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, in Genesis chapter 3, God asked Adam, "Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat?" When Adam will reply, he says, "The woman whom thou gavest to me, whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat." And when God asked Eve, "What is this that thou hast done?" When Eve will reply, she says, "The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat." Now, the Lord didn't further to ask serpent, devil, why did deceive Adam and Eve, because he knows what he is capable of doing. So God declared curse on him. Brethren, Adam and Eve obeyed God in every other things except the forbidden fruit they had. Their obedience to God was uncompleted, and that led to their banishment from the Garden of Eden. James chapter 2, verse 10 to 11. James chapter 2, verse 10 to 11 says, "For whosoever shall keep the whole law and yet offended in one point, he is guilty of all. For he that said, Do not commit adultery, said also, Do not kill. Now, if thou commit no adultery, yet if thou kill, thou hast become a transgressor of the law." Brethren, incomplete obedience of Adam and Eve to God's commandment make them to be guilty of all sins. It makes them to be striving against every other sins. Beloved, incomplete obedience to God is as bad as disobedience to Him. When God asks you to go 10 miles and you go 9.9 miles, you will receive the punishment of people who never go a mile. I pray God will help us to be obedient in all things in Jesus' name. God bless you all.